Chapter 10. Betrayal. To say that they were concerned was an understatement. A 9,000-year-old power company that created super-enhanced soldiers and assassins. Even in the wizarding world where it seemed like anything and everything could happen, that this was just a little too fanatical. The two teens shifted nervously as they stood in front of Dumbledore's desk. They had originally gone to Professor McGonagall about this. She had then taken them up to Dumbledore's office where they were now standing. Miss Granger, Mr. Weasley. I understand that you have some worry about young Mr. Potter. Dumbledore's eyes were twinkling like mad behind his half-moon spectacles, though just like them he was worried as well. What he had seen down in the Great Hall today had really set him on edge. He had never seen anyone able to summon a weapon out of the middle of air like that. Not even he could do something like that. There had also been that green light that had accompanied it with a very strange energy that he did not recognize. Yes, Professor, we went out to look for Harry since he didn't come to class. We found him out on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Harry wasn't the only one. The others were out there and they were with 3 other men. Dumbledore instantly perked up at this, his head lifting slightly higher as he regarded the 2 in front of him. 3 other men, can you describe them to me? Hermione nodded, though it was a little shaky. She wasn't really sure if she was doing the right thing here, but this was Harry and she was worried that something terrible had happened to him. One of them was Genesis Rhapsodos. When we got there, Neville had him hugged into one side with Fred on the other. They honestly looked like they were all best friends and had been for a very long time. She shifted in her seat and sent a look at Ron, who still looked pissed as hell from the dressing down Vincent had given him. The other man said his name was Cloud Strife. He looked like he was only in his early 20s with blonde spiky hair and brilliant glowing blue eyes. He and Blaise seemed to be very close. Close? How close, Miss Granger? McGonagall asked. It looked like she might have to speak with Severus as the boy was in his house. Blaise was sitting in the guy's lap. Harry was sitting in that Genesis character's lap too when he came back out of the forest. This was starting to become disturbing. What about the third person? At this Ron growled, not liking the fact that he got put down so easily by the man. There was just something about the man that made every instinct he had start screaming to run and never look back. The man was dangerous, for that he knew. His eyes were a creepy crimson that glowed. Harry only said his name was Vincent. There was something really off about the man, like just looking at him made you want to run for your life. And Harry called him Dad. Now Dumbledore knew there was something going on. Someone had to be messing with the boys' minds for Harry to think another man was his father. What can you tell me about what was said? The 2 shot to look at each other, Draco's threat running through their minds. They didn't know how serious they could take that threat. George had seemed pretty certain in the Turk's ability to kill without thought. Don't worry, I will not allow anything to happen to you. What did they say? Swallowing hard, Hermione really hoped those threats wouldn't come true. They were saying that they were reincarnations of soldiers and something called Turks from over 9,000 years ago from a city called Midgar. Only a couple gave their new names. Harry claimed he was named Sephiroth Valentine. Dumbledore nodded. Sephiroth had been the name that Severus had given him when he was told about the strange memories he had taken from Harry's mind during their lesson. How about the others? George claimed to be a Turk named Reno, Blaise a Turk named Tseng, Ginny a Turk named Cisna, and Fred a soldier named Zack Fair. They also claimed that Genesis, Cloud and Vincent had been alive for 9,000 years. And that they had been granted a second chance at life to repent for their sins. Ron snorted. Did they really think they were that stupid? Dumbledore frowned hearing this. This was sounding worse and worse as the minutes went by. It looks like he would need to speak to each of them, see what they said. Thank you, Miss Granger. Mr. Weasley, you may head back to your common room. Nodding, the two headed out of the room, the door shutting gently behind them. Albus. Turning his chair slightly, Albus regarded Minerva with a small smile. How do you feel about a small nightcap? As was normal on a Friday night, the Three Broomsticks was packed with witches and wizards that made up the town populace. The atmosphere was light and friendly, as it always was when children weren't around. Walking into the bar, Albus instantly started scanning the tables, saying hello to the normal patrons, smiling fondly to all those he knew on a first-name basis. Living at Hogwarts for the many years he had grown to know the village, so when he saw a young auburn-haired man dressed in a black high-neck sleeveless knitted sweater with a strange leather harness around his middle, he knew he found one of the men he was looking for. Motioning for Minerva to order their drinks, he moved over to the man. As he walked, he took a moment to look over the young man, as that was all he was. He did not look a day over 25. His auburn hair was a controlled windswept that feathered around his face and ended at his shoulders. His eyes are what caught Albus' attention instantly. They were a soft pale blue that seemed to glow in the dim light of the Three Broomsticks. He currently had his head bent down, eyes moving slowly over the pages of a white leather-bound book in crimson leather-gloved hands. As he got closer, he noticed the eyes would slow. He knew someone was approaching him and watching him. He's very aware of his surroundings. Putting on his brightest smile, Albus walked up to the booth the man was sitting. "Good evening," he said cheerfully. The man slowly lifted his head, shielded blue eyes locking with his own. The man was wary, but not to the point of being cold, as a small smile formed on the man's lips and he nodded just slightly. "Good evening, can I help you?" He had a soft tenor with a melodic vibe to it, like this person recited poetry on a daily basis. "I simply noticed a new face here at the Broomsticks. After living here as long as I have, you get to know the village, and seeing a new face, I believe it prudent to come over and say hello." The man smiled a little bigger at that and nodded his head before arrogantly flicking his hair back away from his face. "Thank you. Not many people here are that friendly. Please, would you like to sit?" He motioned towards the seat across from him, his movements as fluid as a dancer's. "Thank you. I hope you do not mind if my companion also joins us. She is ordering our drinks now." "Not at all, my friend. Your desire is the bringer of life, the gift of the goddess." Smiling bright, Albus knew he had his man, Loveless, and recited perfectly and by heart. "Loveless, if I am not mistaken." The man smiled even larger at this, his eyes taking on a coy look to them. "You are familiar with it, I presume?" "Oh yes, it was one of my favorites as a child. Oh, where are my manners? Please forgive this old man, it has been a long day." Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts. He held out his hand, which was taken in a very strong grip, much stronger than you would expect the man across from him to possess. "Genesis Rhapsodos, American fashion model. I also do some Broadway acting when a good play comes to town." An actor, Albus would have to be careful with this one. "American, I should have guessed from the lack of an accent. Tell me, Mr. Rhapsodos, what brings you to Hogsmeade?" "Infinite in mystery is the gift of the goddess, we seek it thus and take to the sky." Albus had to force the smile to stay on his face. Genesis had skirted around the question effortlessly with a quote from Loveless. Shutting his book, Genesis lovingly placed it inside a long crimson leather duster that was sitting on the seat next to him. "I must say your outfit is truly curious. I do not believe I have seen the symbol in your belt." Genesis absently ran red leather-gloved fingers along the belt, feeling the symbol that was etched into the leather. "It's from one of my newest plays. The leather is new, so I'm breaking it in so that I do not end up stiff for the actual performance." Genesis was very intelligent. He was skirting around questions and lying so easily. If Albus didn't already know who this man was, he wouldn't have known the man was lying at all. "Ah, Minerva, thank you." Minerva sat down next to Albus, setting his butterbeer on the table. "Minerva, I would like to introduce you to Genesis Rhapsodos, Mr. Rhapsodos. This is my deputy headmistress, Transfiguration Professor and head of Gryffindor House, Minerva McGonagall." Genesis gently took her hand, raising it to his lips and kissing her knuckles gently. That is quite a title, Professor, and such a beautiful name. Minerva. Minerva couldn't help but blush slightly as her hand was released. Thank you, Mr. Rhapsodos. Oh, he was a charmer as well. When the war of the beast brings about the world's end, the goddess descends from the sky. Wings of light and dark spread afar, she guides us to bliss, her gift everlasting. That is beautiful. Where is it from? Albus frowned slightly. It would seem Genesis had almost completely won over McGonagall in just a few short words. Loveless prologue. Are you familiar with it, Professor? He watched her shake her head, taking a small sip of her own drink. It's such a shame that such a beautiful work has been lost to the common man. Genesis turned to his watch, his eyes going slightly wide. Forgive me, my friend was expecting me back some time ago. I am afraid I stayed out much later than I intended. It was a pleasure speaking with the both of you, and I wish you the best with your students. Grabbing his duster, Genesis stood bowing low to them both before turning and walking away. Even if the morrow is barren of promises, nothing shall forestall my return. Albus watched the man leave, a frown pulling his brow down. Was that really the man we're looking for? Minerva asked, her own eyes following the auburn hair as it left the three broomsticks. Yes, come. Let's see where our dear Mr. Rhapsodos goes. Polishing off his drink, Albus stood and headed out into the street. Stopping just outside the door, he blinked, seeing the street was completely clear. There was no way the man could have simply vanished. The wards around Hogsmeade prevented apparition, just as the wards around Hogwarts did. Where did he go? They hadn't been that far behind him. Even at a dead sprint he would still be visible, especially with that scarlet duster of his. I don't know, Minerva. Come, let's look a bit. Up on the roof, two pairs of eyes watched as the two moved off down the street towards the train station. Not very subtle were they? Genesis whispered, looking over to Vincent, who stood beside him. The Turk had alerted him the minute Dumbledore and McGonagall were heading for the three broomsticks. The Mako-powered earpieces the Turks used were a godsend. They were looking for you. They were. It sounds like those two little busybodies snitched. Reaching up, Genesis clicked his earpiece over to a second frequency. One of them had this frequency up and running all the time, since it was now connected to all the boys and girls at Hogwarts. Saying, are you still awake? Genesis. It's 6 p.m. God, you're as blonde as Claudio. There was laughter over the earpiece from all the others as they were now tuning in. Reno, I swear to Guy, you call me that again, I'm removing Rufus' play toy. Cloud, you will not touch my play toy. You may take his balls, but the dick stays. What the fuck, you? Too much information, Rufus. I don't want to hear anything about Reno's dick. Genesis rolled his eyes, seeing that while they had adult minds, once more they were still young teenagers. Either that or Elena was just a prude. Now if you talked about Tseng's dick, Elena would be all over that conversation. There was Sisnai trying to stir up trouble. Sisnai. Sorry Elena, that dick is mine and mine alone. As fun as this conversation is, I believe that Genesis was trying to say something. Our good old Sephiroth always knew when to kill a fun game. Dumbledore just cornered me in the three broomsticks. It appears that he knows about me and is trying to get information from me. It sounds like your friends snitched on you, son. Vincent said, keeping hunkered down on the roof as Dumbledore and Minerva passed by once more. He leaned forward some, listening to their conversation. Just be warned, they just passed up once more. They are talking about brining you all in for questioning. There were several sighs over the comm. Thank you, Vincent. Don't worry, as long as Soldier does not speak, puppy, I'm talking about you. Then we should have no problem, as my Turks will not talk. Yeah, whatever, Tseng. Ever. Puppy. You cracked in 5 minutes in interrogation training. Hey. That's only because you kept running your hand up and down my arm like some damn pervert. Wait, what? That came from both Cloud and Angela at the exact same time. Ops. Genesis. Thank you for the warning. Now I'm going to shut this off before one of you horn dogs starts sex. And with that Tseng was gone. Laughing, Genesis rolled his eyes, hopping down off the roof. Hogsmeade Weekend needs to hurry up and get here so he can get laid. Fuck, so I can get laid. Vincent shook his head, following the Crimson Commander down and headed back off towards the Shrieking Shack, his for shifting back to that of the sleek black wolf, a white snow leopard falling into step behind him. Tucking the earpiece out of his ear for a moment, Sephiroth looked over to where Ron and Hermione were sitting with the other Gryffindors. Ever since their memories had started to come back, they had started to separate from their normal groups, and they now all sat together and no one else seemed able or willing to come close to them, especially after Sephiroth's stunt in the Great Hall at lunch. This honestly was fine for him. People for the past several weeks had been making comments about him cause of the Prophet. Did it bug him now? Hell no. He was more than used to BS propaganda against him from Avalanche and Utah rebels. Until someone attacked him, the words would slide right off his back like the water off a duck's. People of this world turned too easily on their chosen hero with just a few well-placed words. Rubbing his temples, Sephiroth looked down at the newest copy of the Daily Prophet, his eyes taking in the newest picture. Dolores Umbridge, Hogwarts High Inquisitor. This just made their life even more difficult than it had been with just Dumbledore snooping around. Now they had to add on his two friends had betrayed them. At the moment he was really itching to summon Masamune once again and run them both through for this bullshit. They were putting them all in danger, especially if the Slytherins gained wind of them. Once the two had left, they had begun hatching out a plan of action. They would continue at Hogwarts, gaining as much intel on Voldemort as they could. Rufus, because his family was known Death Eaters, he was their inside man. He would act as a spy for them since Severus could not be trusted. His loyalty was too easily questioned. He seemed to work as a double spy, so it was hard to make a call on where his loyalty laid. Genesis and Cloud would start to sneak into Hogwarts to help once more build up their strength and regain the muscle memory they had all spent years honing and perfecting. Tseng was currently out with Reno scouting for a room that they could use for the training that was enough out of the way that teachers wouldn't be alerted to the sounds of sword fighting. Though now with Umbridge being High Inquisitor, that made their job that much harder. But he knew his big brother. He knew the Turks. They almost never failed a mission. Growing agitated at everything going on, he stood pulling the paper up and throwing it into the fireplace. "I'm heading to bed," he informed the others and headed up for the boys' dorm. "Harry. Wait please." Stopping on the bottom stair, he turned, his eyes as cold as the two had ever seen them. "Harry, please understand. We're worried about you." Hermione tried to plead with Sephiroth. "I do not speak with traitors." Turning, Sephiroth started back up the stairs. Feeling fingers wrapping around his wrist in a weak grip, he moved on instinct. Grabbing the wrist, he wrenched it around, snapping the bones before he released it and put a hand on Ron's ribs and shoved him away hard enough he slammed into the wall. Watching the ginger crumple to the ground unconscious, he didn't feel any remorse. Ron was pushing his last nerves and no one was allowed to touch him unless he gave them permission. He knew Ron was just unconscious and would be hurting. He could hear the strong heartbeat and see it pulsing in his neck. Not giving anyone in the room a second glance, he continued once more for his bed, needing to get some sleep. He could not allow himself to feel remorse. Emotions like that were a weakness that needed to be destroyed.
Well, I do hope you enjoyed the videos so far and video game content. And don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and leave a comment down below. And I noticed 40% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel. If you can, please subscribe to the channel. It'll help me and help the channel grow. Until next time, goodbye!